Great. Hello, all. Hope you're enjoying your day. Welcome to our monthly Tech Talk. And my name is Yufa, if you don't know, and I'm your host for today. Before we start, I want to thank our sponsor, the Collab Lab. We're run by volunteers. We're dedicated to breaking down barriers, providing early career developers with a supportive space to gain real-world experience by collaborating on projects remotely. I believe we have a month left for our current cohort. If you want to learn more about us, please reach out. Next, I am super excited to introduce our guest speaker, Sia. Sia Seko is a data engineer and analytics consultant from Tanzania. Her training is in math, creative writing, econometrics, and data engineering. Currently, she works at Spotify as a data engineer. She also has experience teaching and creating learning content for career and data topics as a way to give back. And a reminder to be compassionate about the different ways people learn and practice data analytics and engineering. Welcome, Sia. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank
Please
you.
share slides.
Sure, I will do that. Thank you, everyone. Right. We'll change my view so you can see you should be able to see.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, good. All right, so as you first said, I'm a data engineer. I have also worked in all the other data roles, the ones that are more known, like a data scientist and data analyst. I also was a manager for a short time because sometimes you have to do some things that, you learn and maybe you don't want to, and then you change courses. That's what I did. I was a manager and then I decided this is not for me, so I went back. In this, you will see I say one data engineer. I want to emphasize that because this is my experience. It does not invalidate anyone else's experience. And also, it's my perspective. I am a Black woman in tech. I was not raised or born in the West, so my view of life and work is different. So you might hear things that maybe you view differently than I do. But the goal is to allow everyone to just understand the very basics. I try to keep this in mind because not everyone is starting at the same step. So I just hope that by the end of this, you are able to know what the fundamentals are, what the meat of what we do is, regardless of which tools and which company you work for. Like, just this is, when it comes down to it, this is what the job is. So as Yufa said, feel free to ask questions. I will not be seeing the chat because I'm sharing my whole screen, but if you have them, you can raise the hand and interrupt. If it works inside of the theme of slide. So, all right. Okay, so let's talk about our clothes for a second. I know we're starting very basic. Like I said, if you think about how you dress and your habits of, like, I pick an outfit, I wear it. You have different ones for like school or work, an interview, exercising. It's all very different. And depending on the place you live, the number of times you maybe go outside, you might have different amounts of things you need to wash or that you need in general. But if you think from the point where you don't have any clean clothes and you have to wash something, or you have enough that you need to say, okay, now I have to wash my clothes. I have to do it manually because where I live, I don't have a washing machine. So I really think about every single time I decide to use something, do I need it? But if you look here, we have a few things you always have to do. You have to gather them. You don't wash your cotton the same way with your silk, maybe different colors. And then maybe some things you dry clean, some things you iron, some things you don't put outside in the sun too much. You know, all these different things that you have to think about when treating clothes. But really the end goal is because everyone really want to be like, every time I want to have my things ready. If I just have this magical thing where I can wear my things, and when I come back, all I see is they are clean, they're in the closet, they're organized for me to use for like the church or the school or gym, anything. What if you did not have to think about that? So that gap between what is not clean and organized to the very fancy closet, that's where we live. But it's data, it's not clothes. So if you think about data, think about your Google search or how you found this event. You went and you searched for something and it returned results. Someone who manages Google infrastructure, they have to think about, where do I put certain keywords or indexes of keywords? How do people can search for multiple things. Sometimes people spell something wrong, but I need to know enough to send them the right result. Someone has to organize all of these things so that when you end up using that, you can do this search. Even another example, if you have to make a dashboard as a data analyst, you don't want to do all the work of like finding all the raw data and finding, oh, this is when this person, I like sports, scored a basket. I have to make a table. I have to put it together so that I can make my dashboard. All those steps in between, sometimes you have to do them, but that portion between an event happening to it being ready for someone to use, that's where we live. Okay, so how are we doing so far before I keep going? Just thumbs up. Great. Okay, so now let's think about all these things. Grab it and retreat it. You need to extract the data somewhere. It could be in Excel things, you know, some people think about where you search, that whenever you enter a search item, that's data that's unorganized, something someone has to think. If I go and tweet, or formerly known as what is tweeting, I have to think about there's someone who stores this. When you search like an old tweet, or I search the Collab lab, that is organized somewhere so that that search result is easy to accomplish. So you need to extract every time an event happens. Event is just any action that produces data. You need to extract all of the formats of that, and then you need to change them so that when you can, you need to organize it and store it. It's not in the form that you got it all the time. You know, maybe you grab a search, but you're storing counts. So you need to transform and create new columns, which is called feature engineering. Or you know that a front-end engineer needs to be able to grab and return all the tweets that mention data engineering when you search Twitter, that needs to live somewhere. So it's not necessarily going to be all in the same form, but it needs to be stored in a way that it's readable. Okay. And then that leads us to this last line where you have to model things. When you think about storage, you have to make it organized. So you think about data modeling. And then you also think about how the people will use what you will make. So the person who stores tweets cannot just do it in any way. They have to think, how are the engineers who are rendering this going to pull this? What's the most efficient way to put this so that when they go to grab it, they can use it in their code or for searches for results. So to like just recap, we have getting the data in its raw form, making changes so you can have it in the best format for the people who use it, and then also storing it. So those are the big buckets, and you might be familiar with this phrasing ETL or ELT because it comes in different forms. You can extract and then transform first before you store it, or you can have intermediate storing, so you extract and load, and then you make some transformation and reload in somewhere else. So the big three is the same, but you still have to think about how you are doing it because it's not the same everywhere. So what tools do we need to be able to be the best butlers for all of this data? So like, think about a big pile. You've seen the landfills. If you had to organize a landfill, that's how much data is being produced because people just go, think about if you had to search even how many data blogs are out there. Anything that is put into the internet is a data point. If you had to organize any of that, it's very, you have to think about all these skills. So the one big one is software engineering, because, excuse my voice, it's going low because I don't talk this much. You have to think about doing things again and again because you don't want to press every time you have a script and then every time you need it to run. So you think about things like make it automatic, scheduling, and if you need to do it for different scenarios, how do you pass parameters so that you can schedule the same thing in different ways, stuff like that. So you have to think, you have to have the software engineer some of the fundamentals for these things. You also have to think about data management skills. Those are helpful because they help you think about how to model data correctly and efficiently, how to think about warehousing data, how to store it so that computation is easy, how to make tables so that you can replicate things or actions fast, because at some point, if it's really big, like scale, you are not just doing the thing, you're doing it for a lot of data. So you have to think about storing and modeling it, not just for what you have right now, but in the near relative future. What will it look like? How does it grow? So those two work together. And then last is probably the most, like the important one is where you work. So if we think about Spotify as a music platform, it's helpful to know how we categorize music, how we count, what counts as a song, what counts as a podcast, what's an episode. Uh, if you think about the people who store, I also worked at some point at a job where we were sending Medicare, Medicaid emails for people to sign up. You have to think about, who do I need this email to go to and this one to go to? So that also changes how you organize things, right? Like, I would model things differently. I would store them maybe in groups differently, things like that. So knowing your industry is very important. So those three together. Okay, now I would like to stress that these are not the same. They're not used the same all the time. For example, I mostly use, my triangle is bending in analytics and domain right now, because I use mostly SQL, structured querying language. And I have to think about the people who use the tables I make a lot. I use some engineering things. I think about orchestration and scale, because I don't want, I need to make it in production. But I spend most of the time thinking about data quality, data storage. So I live in the middle. And so that, you should take that into account when you are like applying for a job, or you are thinking about which skills you want to use, because they might be different. Also, apologies for my background. So the last thing I would like to say is, don't, on this slide, when you look at this triangle, you might be maybe leaning one way or the other way, or maybe you have 1 out of 3 right now. This is okay. To me, I think domain is bigger than this too, because no one can teach a doctor how to be a doctor other than medical school. But they can go and learn technical skills and apply them. But about physiology and, I don't know biology things. That's why I'm a data engineer. But so you have to remember that your domain is probably going to carry you than the other things. And so if you are thinking of transitioning, think about how you can leverage this, because you can take a SQL course and be pretty functional in like a few months, even weeks for some people. But if you know the domain, let's say you work in health records, electronic health records, you know them more than someone who knows a lot of SQL and has never worked at a hospital. So this is my encouragement to today, if you are thinking about how to approach learning. So when we don't all have the same skills, but also our jobs are not the same. Okay, so sometimes you don't need all the fancy things in your job. Maybe they just have a small, like 10 people, and so they need like a small database. Maybe not even a database, they need no-code tools. So you have small scripts. The cost, again, smaller companies will not pay for all these enterprise tools. So you can be more leaning on open source or the things that are not too technical to solve your problem the same way. Another one is, if the company do not have So let's say you work a place and they collect all this data, but they don't even know that what they have is a lot of information that can be helpful, then their their maturity in terms of how they use and think of data is low. So that means if you go, sometimes you will be doing a lot of the things as the first person because you're learning by yourself and you're applying, and you have to convince and say, hey, I think we should do this with this because we have this, you know. So sometimes your job is as limited as your organization's data maturity. Okay. And then the last one is you, the cost of having you. Not everyone will pay you like the top companies. And so if they cannot afford this, you can have analyst job. They have analyst, and then you are doing a lot of engineering things, but your job title does not reflect. So I have been here before many times. And so you have to think, okay, which thing do I want? Do I want to be in the job or do I want to get the pay? This is up to you. I'm telling you all of the things that could affect. Okay. Now, we talked about, you know, what the fundamental job is and how it could look different. I want to remind you that the fundamentals do not change. So even if you're in any of these scenarios, you're still doing the same basic. You need to get data from somewhere, you need to transform it, and you need to put it somewhere that someone can use. That's really like main dish. So whatever you're doing, maybe focus. The way I would say is think about this when you are learning. There is a lot of tools and everything is a distraction. Focus on the fundamentals. So at the risk of confusing you with another analogy, let's go and have a meal. At your plate, the main dish is the fundamentals, okay? If I was telling someone how they should learn, these are the things I would learn on the plate first. I would learn, how do you extract data? How do you store? How do you change it? How do you put it in a table? How do you make a new column? You know, and like, how do I, A plus B equals C? C is a new column, right? So it just, at the very basic, think about learning those first. And then you can, forgive me, I'm very corny, but lubricate your meal, because you have to then think about, okay, I have all this food, I need to have it go down. You need to learn about scale, because scale is, okay, I know how to do this on my computer. Now I need to know how to do this in a big data set or distributed data set. For, if you think about Google, people everywhere, they search for things. So you're not just storing for your computer or like your region, your country, you think about big picture. And then the last thing, which is wrapping all of this together, is how do you schedule things? How do you make parameters for scheduling things so that they not only run in distributed system, but they are scheduled, they are organized, they have scenarios for when they run, they have ordering. So I want this to happen before this happens. I want to get the data before I transform it. I want to check that it exists before I get it. That's the orchestration part. So now, what are those things? If there is any slide I would take a picture of, this is the one for the people who like taking pictures. If you're thinking about like, what do I learn in which order? Start with the plate, go to the glass, and then go to the clock. That is this again, one engineer's perspective. If I had to do it over, I would learn, because then this is one. You need to understand, if you need to do any of these things, you need to know how to either code or write queries. So you need a programming language or a querying language, right? To do these actions. And then you need all this data lives somewhere, right? So you're doing these actions to this data, and it lives in storage systems. You need to model those storage systems. And some of those storage systems are mostly warehouses. So I would, start with the plate. Then once you understand the plate, you can learn about distributed systems. Okay, how does like Netflix think about when Yufa is searching the same movie in the house as Tia? How do they have it organized so that your profile is pulling your things and mine is pulling mine? How are they stored in that way? And how is the system working? How is networking is a good thing to learn. Everybody says this, but it's true. It's like when they say, if you exercise, you feel happy. I don't very well, but I think it's true, but it's also hard. So yeah. And then orchestration is something you will have, if you don't even understand it much going into the job, you will be able, it's one of those things that you can learn on the job as well. So that's my perspective. So to recap, I want to encourage you to try. It's not on the slide, but you should try. You should not, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work, but then you find out, right? That I tried and I didn't. But yes, learn the fundamentals, build your own projects. You don't have to use the IRIS dataset. This might make sense if you're in Python. There is this sample dataset everybody uses. Don't do that. Try to make your own dataset. Maybe like track, okay, if you have a big life event, like you're moving, you can make a dataset of like, this is the tasks I did. This is how I organized them. This is when they happen. This is how long it took from this thing to this thing. You know, you can write a story from something that interests you and you apply the data. It does not have to be some data set online. You can do those, but just stand out, because if you do the same as everyone, then everyone is looking for a job. So try to do something unique to you. I'll give you my example is when I was looking for a job 4 years ago, I made a web scraper that would go to LinkedIn and grab all the job postings with titles I'm interested in once a day. And it would filter to the things that have my skills. And then it would exclude immigration because I'm an immigrant. So if it said no work sponsorship, I would, So yeah, that was very specific, but I can then say about to my job interview, if I have to explain this, is much easier than to explain something that you do not feel connected to. Yeah. And then lean on your transferable skills. If you are a teacher, think about making projects about problems you wanted to solve, that you were like, when I was teaching. Maybe I didn't like how it took 5 days for the district to read our request. You can make, maybe you have access, I don't know, or you could make up a data set of how many requests your district send. Maybe some of this is public information, how much they receive, which ones are taken care of, which ones they are not. I'm making this up. I don't know much about a specific school district. I was just watching Abbott Elementary, so it's in my head. And then use free things. A lot of things are free. Python is free. SQL is free. This is free. This session is free. So try to use free things first before you go and do like pay for. If anyone have questions about things specific, I'm happy to like send it to UFA to share, like a resource, maybe document before you pay for anything. I did not pay. I didn't even pay for my degree because I applied to be a teaching assistant because it's expensive. And I don't think you should, if you don't have to, or if you cannot afford to pay. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoy. That's me. I also work in Black Ties. We do free events every month for Black professionals in data, but everyone is invited. And I also write about questions. If someone asks me many questions, or if I get the same question many times, I write. So that's what you. But yes, this is it. Thank you, Eva. I hope I left
Thank you,
enough
Sia. Yeah.
moments for questions. Do you think it's good?
Yeah, I think it's a good time for questions. I want to emphasize again, always use free resources first. Yeah, because it's a great way for you to test out, right? If you're interested in this at all, right? Because you at the beginning, instead of like giving a huge commitment, and then you can't really get out. So yeah, so it's time for questions. If you have any questions,
I will stop
feel free
sharing.
to raise your hands. Yeah, I love web scraping too. I think it's a great way to create your own data. No questions? You can type it out too if you don't want to speak. That's totally great too.
Yes, you can ask interview related questions. And Shanice, yes, I believe that is a good idea. That's where I put all my projects, and then I would put a link in your resume because I have been in interviews where they say, oh, I saw you did this, talk about this project. So GitHub is a good place. Doesn't have to be fancy, but UFA's website is really good. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Normally, how many rounds? Is this specific to any company? Because I do not have too much,
I think it's
what did you
tailored
say?
to Spotify,
Oh, specific, okay.
maybe.
So I had, and I think this is still the process. So you have a screen, you talk to a recruiter and they ask you about your experience. If they think it's a fit, they will schedule a tech screen, and this is you basically have a benchmark interview to say how much do you know of what you said you know in your resume. Like they'll give you brain teaser sort of questions and also ask you domain, like fundamental questions, like what is map reduce that, you should be like, if you have done this before, you should be able to tell me. You don't necessarily have to know everything. If you forget, people are very receptive. It's not going to take points. We have so many questions that people can get asked. So if you forget something, you can just say, I don't remember this right now, and say what you remember and have a conversation. They will ask you something else. And then if you pass this one, you will then go through 4 things. One is system design. So like end-to-end system. If I wanted a dashboard every day that told me what's the top 5 songs in each country, tell me how you would get it from the logs and store it and present it. So you like make a drawing of how you do. And then the second is like manager, to say like, what do you call it? Behavioral interview. And then what was the other one? Then you have a coding interview, like coding proper within your domain. So the first one was just like, can you do anything? But this other one is, the second round is specific to that job. So if it's a backend, it will be a backend. If it's data, it will be data, so forth. And then if you pass this round, you get a final interview, which is the fourth one I said. And it's a case study. I'm sorry, I was speaking Spanish again. It's like como case study. And it's like a scenario-based question, not necessarily just a coding question. So it might be like, how would you grab the top listeners for this artist and this, like very specific. And then if you pass those, you usually hear back with an offer. So yeah, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So about 6 conversations, maybe 7, but 6, I think at most. And then other companies, I think it depends with, so data science interviews, they might give you a take home because it's mostly like, okay, you cannot make a model in half an hour and think about all the, how the data is structured and what the variables, what the best model to use. So most of the time, I got like something for 4 hours, do this for 4 hours and then send it back. Or there was another one that was, oh yeah, sometimes they will ask you, whatever you do, learn SQL. There will always be SQL questions, always, 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 always. If you don't know SQL in a data interview, you are at a disadvantage. So before you even do anything, just, I don't think this is like everyone who is doing data is going to say no SQL. So yeah. I don't know much about other companies because it's been a while, but I do, and I will share this. Let's see if I can find it. I have it's old because it's a while. It has questions that I actually got, and I would save them. And I will share this with you. Maybe some of them help. Yeah, but then it depends, like that's the screenings. The lead code style questions is checking if you understand how to code. Yeah, that's the text screen most of the time. Now, this is for you.
Very cool. But be mindful, it's been a while, so probably not up to date.
Yeah, it's 2022 is the last. This is when I start working here. So, um, but I hope it helps. I think also there is a platform. If you, I think Lit Code now you have to pay. I think I don't remember for sure, but this one is good. Someone was asking me a while back what to use, and I asked on Twitter, and somebody responded. Actually, Stratus Scratch responded with this, so and I tried it, and it was good. Yeah.
Cool. There are just so many resources out there. Yeah.
So they have free and paid. I believe I forgot the thing that I used the most when I was interview. Um, this is the same with the strata. It's a date mostly for data roles. So very good. They also will have YouTube. They do like practice. Like if you were doing a practice interview, they mock and you find some, they have the YouTube where they do this.
Awesome. I'll also save those. I know Sia's gonna send me some resources too. I'll compile all
Mhm.
them together, send it to you guys.
But thank you. The questions you posted, the initial screening or the other testing, that it's a combination. It's like anything. Like one of the jobs I think I didn't post, I wrote the blog because the question was our PSQL is broken. How do we connect to the database? That was I just had to figure out how to connect to Postgres. So it depends. I just posted, I know there is screening ones and there is, like there was one where you see a case study as well.
Yeah. But like Sia mentioned, it's more like sharing your thought process, right? Obviously, you don't know everything, and they're not expecting you to know everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like you're having a chat. It's not, oh, just if I think I don't want to say they do, but I think human behavior, people will penalize you for not sharing your thought process as you are. Because if you think about if you go to the job, you have to talk with people, you have to change ideas and say,
Mhm.
you know, what do you think about this one? Um, is my solution good? So you have to communicate.
Yeah. I definitely struggle to share my thought process, like verbalize what I'm thinking. Still struggle with it, but I'm getting a lot better. So practice, please. Like practice with your friends or record
Yeah.
yourself, like just rambling about this problem.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just find ways to practice. Cool. Any other questions? Oh, do you often interact with non-technical colleagues like project managers or other stakeholders to talk about projects? Or do project initiatives come to you from your manager or you initiate it from within your team?
Okay. So I worked different teams. I've worked in a team where we have a product. This is the first team I worked in where we have a product manager just for our team. But I worked in different companies and even now in different projects where I will write documents. I will socialize them with other project teams. And then I will say, okay, if we do this, how does it affect you? This is, to me, the biggest skill that people don't think about when they think about engineering. They think about like coding but I spend most of my time managing expectations with leads, other engineers, project managers, the downstream, the stakeholders, the shareholders. So yeah, I spend probably half my time doing this. Yeah. So yeah, if you go to an interview and you have done this a lot in your other jobs, definitely like connect that dot, share that as a strength. It's a strength. Because you can learn how to code. Okay, let's see. Can you share some idea for personal project? I think the best one is things you care about. Like the example about LinkedIn scraping. If you like sports, you can do a sports, like how often do the teams win a championship? You can pull the data and you can make a small table and then you can expose it as a dashboard. And what other things? I have a friend, Tanika, you probably know. She's very big, always posting like resources.
Yeah, I see her everywhere on Twitter,
Yeah.
mostly Twitter. Yeah.
And she was going to like a local government meeting about, they were changing something about the parks. She used public data to tell them not to do it. So the data made a presentation and said, this is why, and this, so anything. And those things, if you are planning something, use that as a way to practice project management. I think also Tanika mentioned this all the time. So just, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to find this machine learning data set. No, you can take this, like if you live in a city and you're like, oh, how often do they fix the roads? Find public data in your district and say, okay, what can I do with this? What's the questions I want to find things about? Let's see. Tools that are free to build. Most of the time I learned by building myself. So like Python, writing code in Python to make a pipeline. You could try the free trials, like Snowflake used to have a free trial for their data warehouse, and they have some free courses. I want to say DBT is free. It's a data build tool. It allows you to make SQL pipelines. So those are some of the free ones. And then should I be discouraged from pursuing this? No, you should not.
No, everyone struggle.
Yes. One of my favorite people that I work with right now interviewed me. And I don't know if Andrew's going to see this, but anyway. I went into the interview and they're a back-end person. They start asking me a back-end question. So I say, hey, I came for a data interview. They changed the question. I was still like, scared, but I was able to do this because sometimes you can mention this, like, this is what I'm here to get evaluated for. So can I get evaluated on this? Another person who is like my aunt is Kimberly Diaz. She always prepare a presentation of a project. And she said, can I present this to you? So you can see something I actually did and all the skills I used. So if you feel discouraged, no, I think you should practice. If you feel brave, you should say, okay, I want to show you this project, right? Like, but you should not feel discouraged. I also struggle with this. It's like, and if you forget like syntax, you should ask. Every time I forget syntax, I say, do you need me to run this to compile? Or can I tell you the steps I was going to do? I don't remember the syntax. Some will say, yeah. Some will say, okay, you can Google the syntax. So, and also just solve first, and then you can make it nice later. I think a lot of the time we try to like, oh, let me make this really nice solution, but just make it work and then make it better. And that, yeah, that was a lot, but I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, I always start with brute force solution. And I also found like if I try to optimize it while I'm doing it, it's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
just like
then,
so overwhelming. So just think about the brute force solutions and then, step by step.
yes, Shanice, they never match what you do.
Yeah, unfortunately, still many companies are using it, but I know a lot of companies starting not using it, but still
Mhm.
that's minority. It's still bigger companies still use it.
Mhm.
Great. It's 4 p.m. So thank you so much everyone, and thank you so much for Sia for joining us. Um, I really loved the presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it too. Yes.
I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. I was a bit nervous about like using examples to explain, but I hope it helped like make the concepts concrete about what you need to do, and then what is the fundamental, because the
Mhm.
rest of it is just, I think, once you know what you have to do, then you just pick which way you do it.